We've read that so many times. You've heard it so many times. We don't even listen to it a lot of times. This morning I'm using a different translation. I'm using the NASB because, just for that reason. Sometimes King James is my favorite. And it's the most beautiful, poetic one. It's one we know and all that. But there's other good ones. And sometimes when you read the same one all the time, I'm like you, and I do it too. I hear that started like John 3:16, for God so, and there goes your mind. You already know that. You don't listen to it. But when you use a different one, the word's a little bit different sometimes. It makes you think about it. And so, in these that think that just one is the only one that God ordained, they ought to read history about what King James was and what he did. He was not a saint. And so there's others that are good too, and if they're used in the right way. Some are better than others in different places and all. But Jesus is a friend of sinners. Sinners, they liked being around Jesus, and they longed to be in His company. All in the Bible they did. They wanted to be with Jesus. What's happened to us, church? What's happened to us? Jesus, you look at His life. They were the ones that came to Him. It wasn't the religious people. They just watched Him to see what He was doing wrong. But it was the down and out, the cast, the ones that people just thought they were dogs. The Samaritans. The Jews looked at the Samaritans as dogs. They were half-breeds. They didn't think nothing of them. The thief on the cross, the lame. They didn't care that they were lame. They just get them out of the way. They're beggars. But all of these, the prostitute, they thought she was the scum of the earth. But Jesus talked to her. He even went to the well and offered her. He offered all of them the water of life is what he offered them. And so we've lost it somewhere along the way. Jesus, they flogged to Him the important things of what we're about here. But meanwhile, they were flocking to Him, and meanwhile, the upstanding, self-righteous people of His day found Him shocking and revolting. Look what they said. They said, "Oh, He healed on the Sabbath. Oh, He is no good. He healed on the Sabbath." He didn't wash His hands before they ate. Boy, He's a sinner. That was real important, wasn't it? And then they said, "Oh, He ate with sinners. He went home with those old publicans, and He ate with them. Boy, He's no good, isn't He?" They didn't listen to a word He said. He was teaching them the gospel, the Word of God, and all they were doing was looking at little old things like washing their hands. And on the Sabbath, they didn't care that man was crippled, that he couldn't walk, that God looked to him and healed him. He didn't care what day it was. That was more important than any of their ceremonial rules that they had, that he was crippled. And he wanted to sympathize with him. And he did, but what did they do? They said, "Oh, he did that on the Sabbath." They didn't care a bit about that poor man that was rejoicing in heaven because he could walk again. I bet you he could give them an earful of what he thought was important. He said, "Man, I couldn't walk, but now I can." Or he said, "I couldn't see, but now I can." I can't tell you why. And then they'd say, "Well, he talked to a prostitute." My. We're not even supposed to talk to those Samaritan women. A man's not even supposed to go up and talk to them. Don't give them the time of day, and he's over there talking to them. He's taking water from them. Where have we lost it? Jesus taught that, and then we want to get like the Pharisees here. He condemned the Pharisees more than he did anybody. I want us to look at meals that Jesus went to. Jesus in the Bible was invited 8 times to a meal, to a dinner or a lunch. Now, 3 of those he accepted. It was just from friends. It was just a friend that he went to. But 5 of them, they defied logic among the Pharisees. It was something place that they thought he shouldn't have been, and they criticized him for it. Is what they did. So 5 of those 8 was that way. In these, they defied the rules that these righteous of their day had. All they were doing was that they were looking for something wrong that Jesus was going to do. That's all they did. If you look at it, they didn't look at the healed man. They looked. It was the Sabbath. They didn't look at that prostitute changed her life, that she poured the oil on his head because she had been changed, that didn't matter. She was touching him. She is a sinner. That's what they were looking at. And I know what that's like. When I was principal, I loved that school, and there's a lot of wonderful people there. But there was a few that just all they did was look for something wrong. That's all they did. I had to cross every T. I had to dot every I, because they were just looking for something wrong to stick me with and to try to cause some trouble or get you fired or whatever. And it wasn't because they cared. It was just revenge on me. And I know what that was like, and it's not a good feeling. It is not to live every day like that. When you want to do good, you're trying to do good, you love the place, you're doing all you can do for it, and still you're having to watch every move and every word it said. And that's what Jesus was doing. But Jesus didn't care. Jesus was God. He wasn't like me. He didn't let it bother him like it does me. I've always said my biggest problem is I care too much. I care too much. But Jesus was God, and He was going to do it, and He didn't. He was the Lord here. But that's what they were doing. They just constantly looked at that, and everything they said was that way. So one of the first 5 places he went that I said that they didn't approve of was to Simon the leper. Simon the leper on Mark chapter 14 is where this one is at, and he goes to Simon the leper. He's called. Now he's got leprosy. Is what he's got. This man does, and he goes to him. He accepts the dinner. This is in Mark 14. Starts in verse 3 there. And while he's there and he's reclined at the table, they sort of lay backwards when they ate. They didn't sit up at a table like we do. They reclined in it. And here, while he's there, he didn't only go to a leper's house, which he was not even supposed to go to. Do you know what the lepers had to go through? Now this shows how much the good, righteous, upstanding, religious people, how good they were, is they made these lepers who couldn't help it, they got a disease of leprosy. They caught it just like you and I catch the flu, or we get cancer or whatever. We couldn't help it. It came to them. But these people had to live outside the city. They had to live completely outside of it. And if anybody came towards them, they had to start hollering, unclean, unclean, unclean. You couldn't even get near them. They had to tell everybody, I'm a leper. That's what they thought of these people. They didn't care whether they wanted them to die. And so Jesus was going to eat with one of them. Now, isn't that different? They wouldn't even get near him, and they had to holler unclean. They wouldn't even give them they wouldn't give them food if they'd been dying in a ditch over here. But Jesus goes and eats with Simon the leper. And to beat it all, he doesn't just go eat with Simon the leper. Look what else happens. It says, and there came a woman with an alabaster vial, a very costly perfume of pure nard, and she broke the vial and poured it over his head. But some were indignantly remarking to one another, why has this perfume been wasted? For this perfume might have been sold for over 300 denarii, and the money given to the poor, and they were scolded her. And Jesus said, let her alone. Why do you bother her? She has done a good deed to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you wish, you can do good to them, but you do not always have me. She has done what she could and has anointed my body beforehand for burial. Truly I say unto you, wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be spoken of in her memory. He didn't just go to a leper's house to eat. This woman here, a sinner, they weren't even supposed to get near. She comes in, breaks the vial over his head, and anoints his head for burial. You can't tell me that woman hadn't repented. She knows the Lord. The Lord wouldn't have let her do it if she hadn't have. She knew what He was. She knew He was Christ. She knew He was going to die. She knew He was going to be resurrected. She knew He was the Son of God. And that's why God let her do it. And yet all these people didn't see that. They didn't see this woman has got a changed heart, that God just saved her soul, that she's going to heaven instead of hell now. But she's a sinner, and she's pouring this, wasting this on this man Jesus' head right here. And that's what they saw on this. And so Judas Iscariot, he might have been the one that said it, because it tells us there in verse 10 that he got up and ran out straightway and went and told the Sanhedrin. He turned in Jesus is what he did. So So he might have been the one that was saying it here. I don't know. But that was one place he went to a meal. Now, another place he went to a meal was another Simon, but he was a Pharisee. This is in Luke 7, chapter 7 of Luke. This is, like I said, this man's name is Simon also, but he's a Pharisee. He's not a leper. He's a Pharisee. Luke 7 and 36. Now, one of the Pharisees was requesting him to dine with him, and he entered the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. Now, this is a very similar story to the one with Simon the leper. It's very similar because a woman comes in here with an alabaster box of perfume, but she is standing behind him. And she wets his feet with her tears, and she wipes his feet with the hairs of her head, and she actually kisses his feet. Kisses his feet. Now, how many would do that? You'd say, oh, no, that's somebody's feet. That's right, but this was the Son of God. I believe if I could kiss the feet of Jesus, I ought to be thrilled to death that He let me that close to Him. And I believe that's what this woman was saying. That I'm a sinner and I deserve hell, but this man has saw through that. He's given me a new life. And I'll kiss his feet. I'll wipe his feet with my hair. She cried the tears of repentance on him. And these men didn't see none of it. They just complained about wasting it. They didn't see a soul that was changed and God, the Son of God, that had done it for. They just saw those things here. She had repented. You can't say that she did because the way she acted, the way Jesus accepted her. Amen.